Well, hello, everyone.
Sure.
My name is Michael Cavallero, the product specialist and technical trainer here at IC Realtime. I've been in the industry going on about 6 years now. I started my career here at IC Realtime in tech support and worked my way up to technical trainer and product specialist. I have a great deal of experience in product development, installation and design, and technical training, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
Cool, thanks, Mike. My name is Gary House, security integrator and dealer for IC Realtime. Been in the security industry for more than 20 years now, I guess so. Been working within the cannabis space for about 3. Dem360 is a managed services company, managed IT services and electronic security company. We specialize in video surveillance, access control, intrusion detection systems. Been working with IC Realtime almost exclusively here in the past few years, helping standardize solutions within the cannabis space.
All right, you guys, so a little bit of history about IC Realtime. IC Realtime was established in 2006, and we are a leader in manufacturing surveillance solutions, serving residential, commercial, municipal, and military security markets. So we pride ourselves in being security solutions providers as well as technology innovators, including being one of the first security manufacturers to create a mobile application for our security cameras. We're excited to provide solutions for the cannabis market, and we really can't wait to show you what technologies and solutions that we can provide for you guys.
So jumping right into it, cannabis across multiple states. One thing we have to keep in mind here as we start talking about the activities within security in terms of the cannabis industry. The one key term I think we have to all understand is that there are multi-state operators, or MSOs. MSOs are types of organizations that are trying to enter the cannabis space that are working in multiple states. You know, the regulations, requirements from state to state vary. What you do in one state will be completely different than what you do in another state to be compliant. So it's very important to understand the diverse set of requirements as you move across the different states. But the other key term here that I think we want to try to emphasize is standardization. With any industry, standardizing is extremely important as you scale and roll out infrastructure. You want to standardize for obvious reasons. You want to make sure that your configurations are the same, that your products are the same, so that way, you know, if you got to change things out, you're able to do so very easily. Your SOPs can be written around equipment that's been standardized across the country, and it really makes management easy. And when you think about standardization, you think about moving into kind of an enterprise class management structure. So with multiple states or MSOs trying to, you know, roll out, you know, cannabis facilities across these, you know, multiple states with diverse requirements, standardization becomes a real challenge, because in some states you might have recording requirements that may only be 30 days, while others, new state entering the medical cannabis market here, West Virginia, requires 4 years. So very diverse set of requirements, but trying to keep a standardization plan is critical in the success of providing video surveillance and security services. Fixed and varifocal and panoramic view cameras have been the choice of ours as an integrator. Fixed cameras, obviously fixed lens angle to an area of interest, varifocal being an optical lens, allowing you to kind of zoom in and zoom out of your area of interest. And then panoramic 360 is giving you that fisheye lens view of everything that basically it can see. Different types of installations would require or utilize the various types of those cameras. Fixed cameras, we put in all different types of facilities to include the cultivation, the retail, the processing. Varifocal cameras work very well in retail environments, specifically above POS workstations to capture transactions of money and product being exchanged. And then 360 cameras can work really anywhere where there's just a lot of activity and you want a greater view of what's happening. Frame rates and storage calculation strategies, as I mentioned, vary from state to state and are very, very critical in trying to achieve your retention requirement. Frame rates, obviously, the more frame rate you have, the more data that you're going to consume in your NVR. So it's very key to understand, how to come up with a good strategy to be able to meet the various data retention requirements for video storage. Obviously, outdoor, you're going to want to have a higher frame rate to be able to capture faster moving objects. Areas like, janitor closets and maybe a manager office, maybe frame rates could be lowered. The key is that every single camera really needs to be engineered around what it's looking at. We don't like to say, one setting across the board works well. One setting for a few cameras might work well, but really every single camera needs to be engineered for what its purpose is. Integrating these systems together, we have a new camera that we are going to be bringing to the market sometime soon that will be able to integrate with alarm systems to be able to enable and disable the infrared that the cameras have to be able to see it dark. These are particularly important, and this capability is particularly important in areas like cultivation facilities where during the flowering stages we have an aggressive life cycle where they are 8 hours on or 8 hours off or whatever that strategy is by the grower. But the key is that these infrared sensors will potentially cause harm, and it's a light pollution that may stunt the plant growth and cause negative impact on the photosynthesis process. So, having the ability to disable and enable these IR sensors via the alarm integration is a new feature that we're going to be introducing to some new cameras here soon. A couple other things just to take into consideration in different states are future planning or capacity planning. Obviously, retail environments are environments that are pretty static and pretty fixed. You don't really see too often, in our experience, retail facilities that grow. But in terms of engineering your solution, you definitely want to leave some capacity there. And I could pivot over to Michael, and he can maybe talk a little bit more about the importance of engineering that in the video surveillance.
Sure, thanks, Gary. So with a lot of the offerings that Gary mentioned, you're going to see a lot of late technologies that you're going to come to expect from IC Realtime here. So when it comes to fixed, varifocal, and panoramic 360 cameras, we're giving you a really broad solution when it comes to these technologies here. Some of these technologies are going to come packed with technology that you've never seen before in your industry. So as he mentioned, the panoramic 360 cameras, which we'll touch base on a little bit more in the webinar, you're going to have the ability to dewarp those cameras. And by dewarping, I mean taking those fisheye lenses, laying those out flat so you can virtually pan, tilt, and zoom in any of those cameras' fields of view. And we'll touch on that a little bit more in the webinar. And then our fixed and varifocal lens offerings allow you a bit of choice when it comes to what you can use those for. For example, varifocal lens cameras, you'll see we're going to talk about coverage of your cash registers and your POS systems and having that ability to tighten in on those shots. For fixed lens cameras, that's going to be your general overview cameras. That's going to allow you to pretty much place those where you need to. When it comes to frame rates and storage, we have the ability to calculate those solutions for you. You give us what you need, and we'll be able to calculate the proper recorder and camera setup for you. Now, when it comes to intelligent video recording, that's going to give you the ability to have advanced motion detection. So those IVS rules are going to allow you for tripwires and intrusion zones and the ability to receive notifications and alerts using many of our software solutions, including our PC and Mac solutions, as well as our mobile solutions for both Android and iOS. All of these can be integrated. You'll see a lot of these cameras that are going to be integrated into your solutions. And then again, future-proofing your camera systems here, we're going to be able to roll out a lot of new technologies and update those technologies as time goes by. So these are great things that you can come to expect from IC Realtime and Dem360. So just to touch on here, and on the fixed and varifocal and the panoramic view camera, I'm going to continue to talk about that dewarping functionality. Now, one of the great advantages here for that dewarping functionality is, again, you have that pan tilt zoom functionality. And not only can you do that from the recorder directly with our recorder offerings that we'll be talking about later, but you'll also be able to do that from your PC and Mac applications as well as your mobile applications. With that dewarping technology, that'll allow you to move through the environment in a 360 field of view. And in doing so, you'll have no blind spots that you'll have to be concerned about, especially in open areas like your sales area or in many of your waiting areas. You'll be able to log into that camera, and in a live view environment, you'll be able to move through transition. And not only will you do that in live view, you'll also be able to do that in playback and exported video as well, as only the 360 camera is being recorded and the fisheye view is being recorded. You'll be able to have that dewarping ability in pretty much any environment that you have necessary. Gary, you can speak a little bit to some of the efficacy on these cameras in the industry.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, these cameras are great. They're always received well. We've been through many state inspections with the cannabis commissions and organizations that regulate these facilities. And each and every time we've been able to show them and go through a demonstration of what the capability of these cameras can do, and they've always been blown away. The other thing for us and why we like these cameras, not just for the capability, but also the cost reduction. While they do have a higher megapixel resolution, and they do require a little bit more storage space to be able to record the video, in some areas of facilities, these cameras could essentially cut back 3 or 4 different fixed view cameras that would have otherwise had to have been installed to be able to capture everything in that area. What that does for you is, one, it eliminates the need to have to run all the additional cables out to that location. So one cable, one camera can do the same as what essentially 3 to 4 cameras could do. That's going to save the client cost. It's going to reduce the amount of retention you would need with the video, and provide a really good situation awareness. And as Michael alluded to, these cameras do capture everything in a raw image. So they can be dewarped in the software, they can be dewarped in the recordings after the fact. And our default megapixel versions actually have the infrared lights on them. So, we're able to see in dark, and the resolution is very, very good on these cameras. I'll jump in here, Michael, and talk about the frame rates and source calculations to kind of go a little bit at what we were talking about earlier. As I mentioned, a lot of the different states have very, regulations. As I mentioned, West Virginia, 4 years data retention, which is a very challenge to achieve that. Other states like Michigan only has 30 days. Some states define exactly what the resolution and the frame rate needs to be, while other states don't. Some states, in the language of the regulations, they'll simply state that you'll need to be able to produce an image that clearly makes out a person's face and to be able to identify them. And some other states actually define a resolution. But whatever the requirements are, it's always critical to understand, again, what the camera's looking at and what the area of interest is to be able to calculate what frame rate you would want to set for that camera to also then be able to achieve the data retention requirements that you need to comply with. One of the strategies that we were able to kind of come up with in some of these states that have very, very long data retention that don't really specify the resolution or frame rate of the recordings would be in the IC Realtime recorders. You have essentially 2 streams. You have your main stream, which is a higher resolution, higher frame rate, better quality picture. Requires more storage to be able to capture the same length of time as what the substream would be, which is a less quality version or resolution, lower frame rate. But the strategy is we record continuously on the substream 24/7. And what that does is it only requires a minimal storage space to be able to capture that in D1 resolution. We're able to extend our retention periods longer. The times of interest, the motion detection, and the areas or the cameras that actually detect activity, we record that, and we record that on the mainstream. So the idea there is that when nothing's going on in these environments, why record at a higher resolution, at a higher frame rate, and take up all the space on our recorders? it's going to consume a lot of space, and we may not be able to get the retention that we need. Obviously, we can stack more recorders, but cost is always, an issue. So by implementing the strategy as such, again, substream recording continuously, mainstream recording on motion, it checks all the boxes for continuous recording. You can come up with a very efficient strategy for being able to get your data retention, and the inspectors that we've been that we've implemented this strategy into the states have all agreed that this is a great strategy. And again, it keeps the cost down. The clients like it because what we would have had to do with 10 recorders, now we can do with maybe 4. So it's very important to understand that strategy, the frame rates, and the resolutions to be able to maximize and meet those data retention requirements.
Yeah, and just to add on that, if we can go back to that slide really quick there. So one thing that we want to add to that is with IC Realtime's recorders, the recorders that we're offering through this channel is really going to give you the ability to have large hard drive spaces in there. So for the recorders, you're looking at on our 6064, you're going to be which is our Cylo solutions. You're going to be able to have either up to 64 terabits of storage, so a great solution there. And on our enterprise level Cylo, you'll be able to utilize up to 128 terabytes of storage. Now, one greater solution is to best utilize that storage is going to be H.265 compression. This is something that we're offering in all our recorders and IP cameras, and that compression is really going to go a long way in utilizing and best utilizing that storage space that we provide for you here at IC Realtime.
So integrating intrusion alarm and POS coverage. Talking about this area here, this is mainly in the retail environment. What we're doing here is we're trying to figure out the best possible way to position the cameras. This is when we talked about the Varifocals and why the Varifocals are best used here. In this image that you see, you'll see kind of a portrait view of the camera, able to capture not just the money drawer, the drawers that carry the product behind, and this is a very standard type of setup in a lot of the retail dispensaries that we've worked with in the various states. But this also captures the area where the client or the customer is standing, is transacting with the dispensary associate. So you see everything from the product being handled, managed, scanned, to the money being transacted here. The alarm integration can be done with various types of POS systems, but what we do here, what we've done in the past is take like the outputs of cash registers to the alarm input. So we capture the motions of every time, or I'm sorry, not the motions, but the alarm input of the transaction of the drawer being opened. There's all kinds of various ways that we can integrate the cameras into the POS sales transactions. But I think the key is here is that we want to make sure we have the right coverage. And what we see a lot of times is that the cameras, when the installers go put them in, they'll have them in a landscape way that maybe captures the money drawer, the transaction of the dispensary associate interacting with the POS sale, but they don't capture the actual the client or the customer, pulling money out of their wallet, putting the product or being able to grab the product from the dispensary associate. So it's critical to understand the position of these cameras over the POS workstations.
So Gary, I'll talk about the software IVS here. So I wanted to expand a little bit about the IVS functionality that we offer here. IVS, like I mentioned previously, is a expansion on your traditional motion detection. And the issues with traditional motion detection is that they're pixel based. So it's based on the amount of pixels that are changing on the cameras. And if you're not configured correctly, you could have false positives, which we don't want, and you can have missed incidents. With our software IVS suite, which gives you tripwires and intrusion zones, which are digitally drawn lines on your images and allow for it to capture motion in those specific locations. So what that means is you don't have to worry about background noise, especially when it's exterior cameras that you're trying to cover with these IVS rules. You can set areas of interest where you want to monitor anybody who enters or occupies intrusion zones or who trips any of these tripwires. And with that, you don't have to do any kind of masking out, any limitations on false positives when it comes to trees waving in the background or what have you. That's the advantage here of IVS functionality. You also have the ability to create minimum and maximum target filters for this IVS software. So what that's going to do for you is that, again, it's going to minimize the chances of false positives to exactly what you're looking for in using these IVS software. Now, the great thing with our IVS suite is that you can receive these notifications in our PC and Mac applications in real time, as well as receiving notifications to our mobile applications as push notifications on your mobile phone. So that's a great advantage there for having these IVS software as well. It's really something that you should look at on our cameras. It exceeds the capabilities of motion detection, and it really minimizes the impact on your hard drive when it comes to consumption of that hard drive, where traditional motion detection may impact that hard drive a little more than our IVS suite. So it's a fantastic piece of software that you can utilize and receive notifications by, and its efficacy can't be understated.
Yeah, and just to expand on that too, the last sentence right there, if you go back to that slide, save time in sorting through video footage. I mean, that's critical. And what we've seen in the field is we have security managers and security personnel that are trying to sort through hours and hours of video footage when they've been given a time frame that almost makes it impossible to find, an efficient period. So having these IVS rules, having the motion detection, gives you a timestamp that you can kind of home into on your playback to find areas of interest. So you're not sitting there wasting valuable time watching and waiting for something to happen to look what it is you're trying to find. System thresholds and future-proofing your video surveillance. It's always critical to have extra capacity within your system. One of the areas and one of the facilities that we've seen where this is so inculcated that we've dealt with in the various states have expansion plans. These expansion plans mean that they are implementing facilities and they have future plans to continue to grow those facilities based on the demand in those states. Every single cultivation facility that we've done, we've seen exponential growth through time. Meaning they might have one area or one flower room that's, maybe has 15 or 20 cameras in it. They have plans to expand that into 3 or 4 other different flower rooms, which means at various times in the future, they're going to be adding additional cameras. It's critical to understand that when you implement and engineer these types of solutions, particularly in the NPR, the frame rates, and the recording, that you leave yourself some capacity to be able to grow. Michael can talk about the industry standard, I guess, here at 50%, but I think having more capacity than that, I think also helps with performance. I think if you have a system that's maxed to 90 or 95 or even 100%, which we do not recommend, you're going to see impact on performance there as well.
Yeah, so I can touch on that, and that is an industry standard at 40 to 50% capacity of the total throughput of your recorders, and that's something that we can calculate and compensate for here at IC Realtime. Not only that, but again, with the technologies like H.265, the ability to utilize our substream as well as our mainstream, as well as the ability to adjust for your compression as well as your frame rate, we can really target to where we want to be in terms of this 40 to 50% capacity, and just make sure that you have no issues when it comes to the not only the performance of the machine, but the expandability of the machine as well. What notifications impact compliance? Our 6064 unit that is part of the Greenline is a single power supply unit. The 8128K, which is the larger, as Michael mentioned, the system that's capable of 128 terabytes, is a dual power supply unit. Thinking about the states that are heavily regulated and put an emphasis on failure notifications, power redundancy, and keeping systems up,
it's critical to understand that the 8128K has the capability to have two power supplies. In fact, it has two power supplies by default, but it's got that capability that it can run the entire system if one power supply fails. Extremely important in the states that are heavily regulated. Some of the states like Pennsylvania, West Virginia, require 48 hours of contingency in the event of failures. Maybe the power goes out, you need battery backup, maybe you have a generator, whatever the case may be. It's critical to understand that you should have a plan to be able to handle multiple power circuits, and with the IC Realtime 8128K, it's able to facilitate those multiple power circuits. The other key thing here too is you hear in a lot of the regulations, we've seen in a lot of the regulation documents talking about failure notifications. The IC Realtime recorders and cameras are capable of being able to provide these notifications. However, in the event that there might be some issues with site problems, connections with the internet, things like that would be preventing those videos to be viewed remotely. There is another solution that we have that is more of an enterprise class scale solution, and this is the CMS server. Implementing the CMS server in larger environments typically is what we do and what we recommend. And the reason why is for those states that have the heavy regulation requirements, if your site goes down, then there's no way that the recorder or whatever the monitoring device is going to be able to send you that notification. So having a CMS server can essentially keep track of those devices. There's other infrastructure requirements in doing that. Obviously, site-to-site VPN, things of that nature will need to be implemented. But the CMS server, let's say sitting at a security operations center off-site somewhere, can essentially connect to the footprint of recorders and cameras and other devices that make up your environment, and report back to that, and then report to you when there are failures, and allow you to drill in to see whether or not there's a problem with the recorder, there's a problem with the camera, or a problem with the general internet at that location.
So to expand on that, Gary, just a bit if we can, that CMS solution, you're going to have your reporting from your recorder directly as mentioned, and those notifications can push out again to our IC Realtime software when it comes to our PC and Mac applications or our mobile applications. As you can see on screen, you're going to receive all of your notifications to those devices, whether it be mobile or PC and Mac. And as that CMS platform, it's going to monitor the health of your recorders connected to that on a large scale. You're going to have that fail-safe of if your recorders go down for some reason and they're not able to send you notifications, that CMS platform will come into play to then send those notifications for you. Now, not only will they do that, the CMS platform can be built out for its own redundancy as well. So if you're concerned that what if the CMS platform goes down, you can create that CMS platform with multiple devices, creating a failover. So really, there's tons of redundancy we can have at play here with all of these cameras and recorders.
So understanding requirements from the various states, again, I can't emphasize enough. Meeting the requirements and being able to understand what the requirements say is extremely important. And one of the things that we do here, and one of the things that we're going to be doing and working with the dealers at IC Realtime, is emphasizing on that compliance requirement. It's important to understand that you have to be transparent with the state cannabis commissions when things go down and things fail, that you have to be sure to report those types of incidents. Michael, do you want to touch on anything else from IC on?
I think that kind of covers it there in terms of what you can meet compliance. Of course, you can always rely on IC Realtime when it comes to technical support. Our U.S.-based technical support out of South Florida and Arizona. These are highly trained technicians with lots of background. And if you have any issues or run into any issues, these are the people that you can rely on from basically 9 in the morning till 9 at night. So we have a great U.S.-based technical support solution for you as well with our hardware.
And what I can say as being a dealer with IC Realtime has always been very responsive. We've been able to get equipment next day aired, shipped out to the site to be able to stay within those compliance timeframes. So it's been a great experience.
Thanks, Gary. So we're going to take a look at some of the actual camera solutions here that we offer through IC Realtime and Dem360. So the first is going to be the Butter line of cameras. These are our fixed lens cameras. They come in 2 megapixel and 4 megapixel variations. So these fixed lens cameras are going to be for your general overview environments or where you have smaller rooms. So things like, again, your lobby areas, not focusing on any of your POS systems, maybe just focusing simply on a general overview of that area, any of your waiting rooms, if you have employee lunch areas that you want to monitor or hallways, these are the cameras that you might want to take a look at. These cameras do have that integrated IVS functionality that we did talk about. They have 90 feet of IR and true wide dynamic range for great contrast ratio there. So again, all around great cameras for your environments where you don't need varifocal lens cameras. Now, next is going to be our Hydro line of cameras here. Now, this is going to be your varifocal solution here. And this is a 3 megapixel camera with 60 frames per second. Now, one thing I can attest to when it comes to this Hydro line of cameras is at 3 megapixel, I would put these up against any other manufacturer's 4, 5, and even 6 megapixel cameras. The reason for that is going to be this has what's called a Sony Starvis chipset. So this isn't your typical off-the-shelf chipsets that you can expect from a lot of manufacturers. We're using only the highest quality chipsets in these varifocal cameras. So these are the cameras that's going to give you the great ability to have the adjustment and tightening on your shots for things like your POS systems. And in doing so, not only are you going to have that beautiful shot there, but it's going to be of the highest quality. A lot of people concern themselves with just resolution and not what internally the cameras are capable of. And this is a high capability camera. It's going to give you that starlight functionality, that varifocal field of view, and 160 feet of IR. Now, next is going to be our Blazer line of cameras. Now, this Blazer line of cameras here, these are dual lens thermal cameras here. And what these are going to be great for are especially for exterior coverage, especially at nighttime. I mentioned those IVS rules, and sometimes at nighttime, it may be difficult for the camera to capture an object that's crossing those IVS rules. With these Blazer line of cameras, that's going to give you the ability with that thermal lens camera to really light up the environment and then capture any object that's moving through that environment in high heat field of view. The capabilities of these cameras really can't be understated, and we have them in both a PTZ and a dual lens offering here at IC Realtime. Now, another PTZ we have for it is the Z420. The Z420 is a pan-tilt zoom camera. Now, the great thing about all of our pan-tilt zoom cameras is that they can be controlled not only from a keyboard, you don't even need any of those. All of our software offerings are going to give you the ability to control these PTZs through a virtual interface. So all you need to have is someone monitoring that camera on a laptop or desktop or even on a mobile device. On our mobile device, you'll have a virtual 8-way control with the ability to zoom, the ability to control your aperture, the ability to control your focus. Most of these cameras do have autofocus. Most of these cameras have above 300 feet field of view, 30 times optical zoom with 300 feet of IR. So these are going to be great cameras. And again, you can control them virtually from almost any environment. You don't need to have someone with a dedicated joystick for these. You can just control them virtually from any solution that you have available. Now, the OG360, these are going to be our multi-lens cameras, and we already discussed the 360 cameras here with the fisheye lens cameras, but another offering that we have available is going to be our single housing 4-lens camera in the OG360 line. Now, the advantage of these cameras is that you're going to have 4 different fields of view on a single cable run. So this is going to occupy less real estate on something like a switch. It's going to only require a single cable run during installation, saving a lot of time and money. And it's going to give you the ability, especially when it comes to the 4-lens camera, to have the ability to have varifocal functionality on each of those lenses. So again, these can't be understated as to the quality of these cameras, what you're going to save in terms of cost, and what they bring to the table in terms of capability. That 4-lens camera is going to allow you to, especially on an outdoor install and a corner mount, allow you to cover 2 sides of an entire building just using a single housing with 4 lenses and a single cable run. And then lastly is going to be our Cylo smart video recorders. We've touched on this, and again, so you have your Cylo 6064, which is going to give you 64 terabytes of storage, going to give you up to 64 channels, has a fantastic bit rate, high throughput with H.265 compression, and then our enterprise level machine, the Cylo 8128, which is going to give you 128 channels for your cameras. It's going to give you 128 terabytes in terms of storage. As you can see, you have a 7-inch monitor on the front with a locking mechanism and hot swappable drive bays. So this is going to be, again, your enterprise solution. It's a stout machine, and really, again, these are just fantastic recorders for what you're looking for in the industry. So Gary, if you want to go ahead and talk about any final thoughts, I know you wanted to mention the blackout cameras that are coming soon. Can you touch base a little bit on those?
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned before, these cultivation environments where plant growth is critical, there seems to be a common trend that we've seen, and that the issue is with light pollution. A lot of the cultivators that we've seen when they go into these rooms, when they start bringing the equipment in, set up all the different types of irrigation, fertigation, and various systems that are going to facilitate the plant growth. One of the things that they do is they close the doors. They try to see any light pollution that's being emitted from anywhere. What we found in a lot of manufacturers' cameras is that there tends to be LED lights on the circuit boards, which may just be an indicator light, just saying that simply the camera's turned on. That little light could impact plant growth in such a way that could decrease the yield, which could equate to lots of money. It could be something to the plants referred to as herming out, which they basically females turn to males and they produce seeds, and then they impact the plants around them. So even the littlest bit of light, we've learned, is always a concern of these cultivators and growers who want to try to maximize their output and maximize their yield. So as we've done these facilities and we've seen these challenges, we've kind of thought to ourselves, how can we solve that problem? What can we do to kind of help these growers not spend so much time trying to track down the light pollution? Because we've even seen times where they've taken pieces of tape, they put them over the lenses, they put covers over the cameras because the IR was on, it couldn't be turned off. So what we've done is we went back to the drawing board, and we've really engineered a solution specifically that caters to these types of environments. And the camera is the blackout camera. And what the blackout camera really does is 2 things. It doesn't have any status indicator lights on it, so it can emit no light pollution, even when in normal operating environments and nighttime environments, there won't be any indication that the camera's on. We'll obviously know that by looking at the recorder and monitoring its status through that. The other thing that we've been able to do is adjust the firmware in such a way that we can use contact sensors from doors that are entries into these flowering rooms or vegetation rooms where the lights have to be off. The IR cannot be on, because if the IR was on, it would impact that plant growth. So if we can minimally expose the plants or mitigate that light pollution, it could potentially save these cultivators, thousands, essentially tens of thousands of dollars in higher yields of their plants by not impacting that photosynthesis process. Very, very good feature. Something that we've talked to a lot of the growers out there. We've gotten feedback from them. They're looking forward to this type of camera, and not only is it going to potentially mitigate that risk of affecting plant growth, but it's going to save them lots of time, lots of hours where they go into these cultivation rooms and they have to put the tape or the covers over the cameras, both when they go to begin the blackout cycle and when they come out of the blackout cycle. So lots of time and money being saved with this feature and with this camera model.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and do a bit of Q&A here. For anybody who has any questions, we do have a Q&A tab in this Zoom meeting. You can place your questions there. We already have a couple of people here who do have some questions here, so let's go ahead and answer those. First question from anonymous attendee is, what is the max retention time? So max retention time is really a bit open to how we configure these machines. You can have almost as much retention time as you require. If you run out of storage on one machine, we can transition to another machine. We can develop these installs with multiple recorders so that we can expand on that retention as need be. But retention really relies on resolution, frame rate, bit rate. There's a lot of variables when it comes to the retention of our recordings. But again, we have solutions and we have methods in which we can expand and achieve on those retention times that are required from any of your municipalities. Gary, you want to speak to that a little bit as well?
Sure, and to give you a real world example, if you're looking for actual numbers, we have some sites that we've done in PA which has a 2-year data retention policy. It was once 4 years. The state regulators came back about a year ago and modified the regulations to make it 2 years. We have one particular site up there that has, I believe, 55 cameras. We have a variation of 12 megapixel, the OG360s, Varifocals, the butters, you know, the 2-year retention, I think we have 5 NVRs up there. Or actually at the 55 camera site, we have 4 NVRs. And the strategy that we've implemented was the substream continuous and then the motion on the main. With that right now, the installation was done back in actually June of 2019. We are on track right now. I believe the 8128K drive space on those was 128 terabytes, and we had a RAID array, which I think after the RAID gave us about 87 usable terabytes, 87.6 usable terabytes per unit. And with that space, again, in 55 cameras, 4 NVR units will be getting us the 2-year data retention requirements.
Excellent, excellent, Gary. So next question here is going to be about our CMS solution. Does that just allow me to access the records, the recordings that are on the Cylo at each location, or is it compiling records from multiple locations in the cloud? So our CMS solution basically allows you to review the recordings from your site. It doesn't per se give you a off-site storage solution, but it does allow you to monitor the recorders as well as playback and live view any of these recordings off-site to any of your stores that you have throughout your municipality or your city. So that's what it's more used for, just as a central management system. It's not used as a cloud storage solution. However, we do have cloud storage solutions that we can make available to you, including our Ella line, and that's something that we can look at a later time. But we do have cloud storage solutions that you can utilize, and we also have our CMS servers for off-site control as well. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Looks like we have one more question here. Are these recorders on premises or cloud? So as I mentioned, your recorders will be on premises, but you can utilize those CMS solutions for off-site monitoring and playback of your footage, as well as any kind of health monitoring of your recorders and cameras as well. And then again, we have our separate cloud storage solutions as well. All right, so it looks like we don't have any more questions at this time. Gary, you want to say anything else before we close out?
You know, I just want to emphasize the standardization, understanding the regulations, and understanding that, you know, collectively, Dem360 and IC Realtime have been working very closely, hand in hand, to solve some of these problems, and you know, help. Not just, you know, meet these very, sometimes very strict and, you know, requirements from the states, but also, you know, help these cultivators and growers and understand the industry and understand what it is that they do. You know, we've worked well hand in hand over the past few years, and you know, the solutions that we have tend to, meet and exceed all the expectations of not just our clients, but also the state regulators and the commissions.
That's fantastic, Gary. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us on today's webinar. I hope you found this information informative and useful. You can lean on Dem360 and IC Realtime for all of your security needs. And again, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, guys, thanks very much. I'm just going to, I see there was a question, and I was going to let everyone know that this will be on our website too, the recording. So if anybody wants to go back and review any part of it, and then obviously they can contact you guys for anything too, through your emails, which are on our site. All right,
Okay.
everyone, have a good day. Thank you.